what is your view on joint replacements? What is your criteria for recommending someone to get a joint replacement?
Great question. At our last talk, we actually talked about this idea of bone on bone and that it doesn't exist, which the book goes into, and I'll share a little bit of it here to not leave people on a cliffhanger. But that was probably one of the main questions we got afterwards, where people, I already got my joint replaced, so what do I do with that? Well, once it's replaced, and there's no going back, so we have to move forward. But when should I do a joint replacement? Should I do a joint replacement? What joint should I be replacing? There's a lot of good research on knee replacements, a lot of good research on hip replacements. There's some decent research on shoulder replacements. And then there's other joints that have attempted to be replaced throughout the history of joint replacements that did not go well and are not going well. And those are the ones related to the spine. So if anyone is considering a joint replacement, vertebral replacement, the evidence isn't there, the research isn't there, would not, I'd recommend getting other opinions if that's what you're being told. So this idea of being bone on bone, it's one of these things that's been passed down from generation to generation to generation to generation. Everyone believes it. You have arthritis, it means that you're bone on bone. It means that, for example, in the knee, the femur's rubbing on the tibia and that they're rubbing each other and there's no joint space and it's going to continue to degenerate. They're going to rub harder and harder. You're going to be in severe pain. You need this joint replacement. The reality is there's no science showing that that actually exists. On the contrary, there is science showing that that doesn't happen. And this comes from Teriyama et al. It was in the 80s. They're in Japan. And they took a cadaver and they took the femur and the tibia, hooked it up to a machine, and they tried to press the femur, so the thigh bone, into the tibia, the shin bone. They used 2 times the body weight trying to force these things together. They weren't able to get them to touch. And this is in a cadaver. We now go into the living system that still has fluids throughout it. And in the knee joint, for example, we have synovial fluid and other fluids that go in there. This fluid in this phase of water, they have alike charges. So basic science, what happens when alike charges are across from each other? They're going to repel, right? If they're different charges, positive, negative, or plus minus, they're going to attract each other. So the same ones, they're going to repel. And that's what we see in the synovial joint is that we have alike charges that are repelling the joint surfaces apart. So mind you that in the cadaver, that fluid's not there anymore. And these surfaces still weren't able to touch.
Right.
So now we go into the living system that has fluid in that knee, the synovial fluid that has the alike charge or has the alike charges that are repelling each other, and now becomes even less likely that these surfaces can touch against each other. So we need to change our concept of what arthritis is. It's not a bone on bone condition because bone on bone does not exist up to this date. Like no one has researched and shown that it does exist. What tends to happen is people will get an x-ray and then from the x-ray, it looks like there's no joint space. And they'll say, oh, look at this, this is wearing away. And we see that a trusted figure is telling us that. So then we start to believe that, oh, we're bone on bone. Now, what happens when someone's told they're bone on bone? They get afraid. I don't want to move because if I move, I'm going to further degenerate this and I am going to need a joint replacement. So a lot of people get fearful and stop moving. And the common narrative is you're going to need a joint replacement. You'll know when. Just call me when you're ready. So now the person's anticipating that I'm going to need this thing. I just need to keep my mind on the pain. And as it keeps getting worse because I'm thinking about it all the time, now I'll go get that joint replacement. So I think people are getting primed into believing that they need this thing and that there's no other solution. And that is not the case. I said earlier that we need to reframe how we think about arthritis. And I will say that cartilage can deteriorate. And that's what we tend to see in arthritis is that the cartilage that's covering the ends of the bones, that starts to deteriorate. The reason being is because of inflammation that is in that area. So then what's bringing on inflammation? Because inflammation is not a bad thing. We need inflammation to heal. It's the first step of the healing process. But when we have too much inflammation that's not being dealt with, now that area is deteriorating and it's not being built back up. So we need a good balance of that. So we look at what is your internal load, something that we talk on a lot. How are you sleeping? One lady I was chatting with, so sleeping will help my knee. how much do you sleep a night right now? Well, about 4 hours. I think it's a really good start to
Mm-hmm.
start getting more sleep and seeing how it changes. Because what happens when we sleep? Your body repairs itself.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not sleeping, you're not giving your body that time to be able to repair itself. So, sleep. What's your nutrition like? Are you putting in a bunch of junk food over and over and over and over again? Have all these free radicals floating around, no antioxidants to come and pick up all the waste that now the cartilage is getting the message inflammation, keep deteriorating. And what happens when a person stops moving? More inflammation is coming on because they're not giving themselves the recovery, the setup for recovery that is needed once you are active and moving around. So it's interesting because there is studies showing that in postmenopausal women and in other populations, but this is the study group that we'll use. In postmenopausal women that were told that they have some form of arthritis, mild to moderate, they started a low impact physical activity program. So low level plyometrics, so jumping up and down, walking, just anything impact into the leg. What they found was that their patellofemoral cartilage actually regenerated.
Mm-hmm.
No stem cells, no additives, no fancy pill or supplement, no injections, just impact and regenerated their cartilage.
Wow.
Very powerful what our bodies can do when we give them the chance.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're told that we're bone on bone, come to me when your pain's too much, we don't give people that chance to even have that opportunity to even think of what would life look like without a joint replacement. With that being said, joint replacements, especially at the hip and at the knee, they can be very successful for people in limiting their pain, improving function somewhat, but getting back to the level that they may have wanted to get to becomes a lot more difficult when you have this joint because surgeons, engineers, they're doing the best they can to make this as lined up as naturally as they can to your anatomy. It's never going to be perfect,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's always going to be millimeter off or zero point 0.1 millimeters off. It's never going to be as perfect as it was the way that it was created. So I always tell people that make sure that you know going into this, it's not going to be as perfect as your natural anatomy, but also going into this, if you are going to have a knee replacement, and I guess we should talk on, well, when is that joint replacement? And I'm talking about the knee, it could be the hip or the shoulder. It's when you have given yourself a chance, a fair chance, a year to 2 years of strengthening, of using impact exercise, of using some cognitive reframing, using neuroplasticity to change what your brain is thinking about the knee. If you've done those things and it's still present and it's inhibiting you from doing what you want to do, now it's a good time to look at that surgery,
Mm-hmm.
right? But people aren't even given that chance anymore. They're just
Right.
told, oh, look at this x-ray. Yeah, it's deteriorating. You're bone on bone coming to get that surgery. But let's give people a chance. Let's give them 1 to 2 years to really work at it. And then here's the thing. People go, well, I don't want to wait 1 to 2 years. I'm wasting time. No, you just spent 1 to 2 years getting stronger, meaning that you're going to recover much faster
Yeah.
than if you weren't doing that in the beginning. So it's really not wasted time or effort. It's a good thing to be doing. But the other thing I tell people is that before you go in to have a joint replacement, I want you to sit and I want you to reflect if you can accept this as your knee because it's a foreign object that's going into the body. And so many people after a replacement will not say my knee, they'll say my replaced knee, my joint replaced knee. You are dissociating that body part away from yourself. Neurologically, now your brain is saying, this knee is not actually me. This knee is something that was put into me, but it's not my knee. So if you are going to have a joint replacement, are you able to accept and welcome this replacement part as one of your own now?
Mm-hmm.
Because if not, and this is from working with people that have chronic pain after they have the knee replaced, I want to decrease my pain, so I had this knee replacement. Why do I still have this discomfort? This thing was supposed to fix it. You haven't accepted that this is now your body part. your thought is still that this is something else. So when the brain perceives a foreign object in the body, what does it do?
Hmm.
It's fight time, baby. We're sending out these cells. We're going to attack this thing. We're going to try to get it out of there. We need to fully accept it. And if that criteria is met, that you can do that, you're willing to put in the work afterwards to rehab, get your motion back, get your strength back. You've given yourself a fair opportunity, year, 2 years of going at it, and it's didn't work for you. Good, then there's a joint replacement. But we've worked with many people that were told you have to have this joint replaced, and guess what? 2, 3, 5, 6, 7 years later, they're running. They're out here running without a replacement. Not, I won't say the best their knees ever felt, because that was probably when they were like 10, 11, or 12, but they're feeling really good. They are feeling incredibly good, and they're saying, hey, I don't need that follow-up for that knee replacement. Can you stop calling me about the knee replacement surgery? Stop sending me flyers saying that I need a knee replacement surgery, because I don't. I've done these other things. It was successful. I don't want that anymore. But people are so bombarded with this info, and sorry to go on a tangent here, but oh man, I had a younger patient that was telling me that she was getting a call from a surgical office saying, you need a preventative knee replacement surgery. A preventative knee replacement surgery? A knee replacement surgery is never preventative. It's the last option. Everything else has been exhausted. Now we can go to the knee replacement, not preventative. And she was younger. She was younger in getting this call. Like, luckily she's like very health literate, very, very smart and sassy. And was like, no, don't call me with that. Like, get that corn out of my face, and let's move on. But it's really, it's kind of heartbreaking when you hear that. And again, I don't want to paint this picture that like every orthopedic surgeon that's doing knee replacements is sitting there with like a suitcase full of money and
No,
let's call these people and do that. There are really great surgeons that are doing knee replacements. And how do you know they're really great? Because they're not offering it as the first line solution. You have some knee discomfort? All right, we don't need to do imaging. You should go to physical therapy. Do that. We'll follow up and we'll see where we're at. All right, how's it going? Going well? Okay, cool. Keep going. Keep going. Get stronger, get stronger. Back pocket, we have this thing, but I'm not even going to offer it until we've done the conservative management first. And we have a handful of those that we know and that we work with, and they're awesome. And if you're questioning like, oh man, I want that, like, go get second opinions, third opinions, fourth opinions.
For sure. Well, I think that our desire at Hope Not Nope and just in general is for people to become the best versions of themselves. But I think part of becoming the best version of yourself is to look at the way that we were initially designed and honor and like reverence that. And so before you hop into, any surgery, especially joint replacement, but really just anything, ask yourself, am I honoring and reverencing the original design that I've had? And am I giving it a chance to be the best that it possibly can?
Yeah, and when we look at hope, right? Hope it's defined by self-agency, goals, and a framework. So ask yourself, what framework am I using? Am I using this thing that's been passed down from generation to generation to generation that does not have any scientific fundamental base to it? Or am I using what the modern science is showing us?
Right. Oh, I love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lena, for that great question. I hope that some of our listeners are able to take that in for themselves, but also maybe you have a parent or a grandparent or someone in your life that is questioning, oh, should I have a joint replacement, that you can share this with, because it might give them a new perspective that might help them before they go get that replacement before they really need to.